Kamal woke before dawn. The sky was still dark and the first stars were hiding. He tied a cloth around his head and lifted his basket. The basket held crack seeds and a small, heavy box wrapped in oilcloth. He walked the dusty road to the border market. His feet knew the way by heart. The border market was a long line of stalls and carts that met between two lands. It had no rules. Traders came from many towns and many tongues mixed in the air. The empire's banners hung along the road like dull moons. People looked at the banners and bowed their heads. They watched the soldiers and the taxmen, but they did not always listen to them. That was the market's rule: live, trade, and leave quick. Kamal set up his stall near a pillar of carved stone. He put the box under the table and laid out small sacks of seeds. The seeds were plain. He smiled at a woman who bought 3 handfuls. He weighed them with a wooden scoop and tied the sack with a piece of string. The woman smiled back and left. Across the square a cart of taxmen stood like a gray wall. Their armor shone with early light. One taxman held a scanner that hummed and glowed. The scanner read goods and named sums in the air. It did not read faces. It did not read hunger. It just counted things and made the empire richer. The scanner moved down the line of stalls. Kamal watched it sweep past a neighbor who sold oil. The neighbor's hands trembled when the scanner read the numbers. He mouthed the price and handed coins over like a man handing over a piece of his life. Kamal felt the cold of that moment. He felt the heavy box under his table like a small animal breathing. Kamal could pay. He could sell his seeds and fold his hands and let the empire take its share. The box was not for sale. He had wrapped it in oilcloth and slept with the cloth near his chest. He had cut and sewn and kept the seals tight. The box smelled of rain and old wood. A child ran past the stall and dropped a clay whistle. It rolled to Kamal's foot. He picked it up and felt the small notch on its side. He put the whistle in his pocket. The whistle was ordinary and simple. It fit his hand like a small promise. The taxman's scanner stopped at Kamal's stall. The machine's light spread over Kamal's fingers and the seeds. A neighbor looked at Kamal with eyes full of the empire's fear. The taxman named a number that hung in the air. It was larger than Kamal expected. He smiled with his mouth. Inside, his heart beat against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Bring it forward," the taxman said. The crowd made space. People watched like fish in a glass bowl. Kamal set his basket on the table. He lifted the oilcloth box with a slow and careful hand. The taxman's scanner hummed closer. The sound felt sharp and hungry. Kamal opened the box. Inside were seeds. They looked plain at first, flat and dark as old coins. But a thin, warm mist rose from them. It smelled faintly of iron and earth. The scanner's light hit the seeds and faltered. It should have been clear. It should have counted and labeled. Instead the machine made a small noise and stuttered. The taxman frowned. He stepped closer and reached with a gloved hand. The scanner tried again. Numbers swam in the air. The crowd leaned in. Kamal felt the eyes like small knives. He did not move like a frightened man. He moved like someone who had already chosen. "These seeds are for the border fields," he said quietly. "They must not be taken. They are promised to many families. If you take them now, the harvest will fail." The taxman laughed a small laugh. "All harvests fail for the poor," he said. He looked at Kamal as if the man was a small pest. His words cut the air like a blade. Kamal reached into his pocket and pulled the clay whistle. He blew a single note. The sound was simple and clean. It was not loud. It was like a plow in dry soil. For a breath the market seemed to hold still. The scanner blinked, and the light faltered as if the note had touched it. Kamal told a short story then. He spoke of a child who waited for bread and of a mother who could not sleep until the field grew. His voice was low and steady. The market leaned closer. The taxman's face tightened. His helmet shadowed his eyes, but Kamal felt doubt move there like a small animal. A cartwheel creaked. People moved. A trader spat on the ground. A woman laughed too loud. The taxman reached to lift the box. Kamal's fingers closed on the oilcloth. He did not try to pull the box back. He had one plan, to make the market see the seed as a promise, not as a thing to count. At that moment, a child pointed down the road and screamed. Something moved fast. Not carts, not people. A small line of riders came over the hill, banners snapping. Their boots struck the market stones like drums. Kamal watched them and understood at once, they were not here for a simple tax check. They were here for the box. The rider in front walked up with the calm of a man who gives orders often. He did not look at stalls. He looked at the line of people and the banners. His voice cut the air. By order of the governor, he said, all irregular goods are seized. Kamal felt the box press against his chest like a warm secret. He had three choices then. He could run and leave the box and the people it promised. He could hide it and let the soldiers take the market. Or he could stand. He could step forward and face the riders with nothing but a farmer's truth. He lifted his chin and stepped out from the crowd. The rider's smile was small and sharp. He liked power. He liked being obeyed. Kamal felt the weight of that smile and the weight of his own small box. He set the oilcloth on the table and placed the clay whistle beside it. He spoke in a voice the whole market could hear. I will trade my life for what is inside, he said. If you take these seeds, my people will starve. Let us find a way by law or by test. But do not take them by force. The rider's eyes narrowed. The market watched. The taxmen shifted. The governor's men laughed once like knives. For a moment the market was a held breath. Kamal stood alone but not afraid. Around him, the border market waited to learn if a farmer could make the empire listen. The rider's voice left the market like a cold wind. Kamal's words hung in the air. Soldiers argued in low voices. The governor's men moved like men who did not want trouble. At last the rider nodded and told the taxman to wait. He led Kamal away with a hand on the plow of law. Kamal walked with his head high. He had the oilcloth box against his side. People watched from their stalls. Some whispered his name. Some mumbled prayers. A child threw a small stone and it hit a pot with a loud ring. The sound broke the heavy air for a moment. Kamal kept walking. After the market, the riders took him to a wide house where the governor sat. The governor was not large, but his voice filled the room. He wore clean clothes and had ink on his fingers. He asked many questions with each small move. Kamal answered simply. He told the truth about the seeds and the box. He said the seeds came from his barn and his father's old plow. The governor narrowed his eyes. Old plows are old things. They hold many small secrets. He sent 2 men to search Kamal's farm. Kamal's heart turned as the riders left. He had hidden nothing, but he also had not told the whole truth. The box must stay safe, and the seeds must be kept. Back home, the barn smelled of straw and old tools. Kamal's hands were steady as he took down the plow. He had used it since he was a boy. The iron blade carried his father's mark. He ran his hand along the wood and felt the groove of years. Under the handle, where dirt had built up, his fingers hit something thin and hard. He pried the dirt away. A thin strip of metal slid free. It was folded small and wrapped in oil. Kamal opened it. Maps are not for farmers, he thought, but his hands did not stop. Opened flat, the metal strip had a line scratched into it. The line curved like a river and ended in a circle. The circle had marks that looked like letters. Kamal showed the strip to Lyra. She was the only one he trusted with the secret. Lyra had worked on many farms and spoke little. Her eyes read maps like other people read weather. She sat very still and traced the scratches with a finger. "This is not on our charts," she said. Her voice was a small thing. "This is old. This is dangerous." Kamal wrapped the strip and put it in the oilcloth box. The box felt heavier now. He tied the cloth tight. That night he lay awake and heard the sound of soldiers in the village. He thought of the governor's ink and the taxman's scanner. He thought of the rider who liked to be obeyed. He knew the map would not stay hidden for long. They decided to go. 2 nights later, under a moon thin as a coin, Kamal, Lyra, and one friend left the village. They walked without light. The road to the river is long and flat. Watch posts sit like dull teeth along the road. They passed them but told the men simple lies. The map must not be shown. At the river they found a small boat tied to a post. A man waited. He had a face like a weathered rock. He took the oilcloth without a word and nodded. He knew the river's secret places. The water cut the land soft and quiet. Mist hugged the boat like a shawl. The map's line led them across the low water and into fog. Hours passed. The boat bumped soft at a sandbar. Ahead, an island rose like a hidden thought. No birds sang there. The trees held tight leaves and the air tasted of salt and old moss. They landed and climbed. The circle on the metal strip matched a stone at the island's center. The stone was small and round, carved with lines like the map's scratches. A low sound hummed under their feet, gentle as breath. Lyra placed her hand on the stone. It warmed for a second like the touch of sun. Then the ground under the stone moved and a small door opened in the earth. It was no taller than a man, and it smelled of old wood and iron. A voice spoke, not with sound but like a thought at the back of their heads. Kamal felt it like wind on his face. "You who plant with hands may wake the field," the voice said. It used words they both almost knew and felt. It was not a man's voice. It was older than men. Kamal's friend stepped back. He wanted to run. Lyra stepped forward instead. Her hands were steady. She pulled the oilcloth box out and set it near the door. The box answered with a small light, like something remembering a name. They entered. The room inside was cool and quiet. Metal and carved wood lined the walls. Rows of small nests lay across the floor. Each nest held a seed no larger than a thumb. They glowed faint blue, like stars turned small. The air smelled of iron and sweet earth. Kamal reached for a seed with fingers that shook a little. When his skin touched it, the seed pulsed. A memory, or something like a memory, moved through his mind. He saw fields in a light that was not his. He saw hands that planted slow and watched the ground grow. He saw harvests so wide they looked like silver waves. The voice spoke again, softer. "These seeds are old craft. They hold the earth's slow wool. Plant them and the field will answer. But be warned, what wakes changes the world. Rules break. Rivers will remember old ways. The empire will not like the change." Kamal thought of the governor's ink and the rider's smile. He thought of children with empty bowls. He thought of hunger and the sound of a plow. The choice was heavy. He pressed his palm to the box and listened to the small, steady pulse. Lyra looked at him and then at the door. "We did not come to steal," she said simply. "We came to plant." Kamal nodded. He closed the oilcloth slow. The seeds were not for one field. They were not only for hunger. They were a tool, a danger, and a promise. He tucked the metal strip into his shirt and took a breath like a man who must step from one world to another. They left the island at dawn with the box quiet and the map folded small. Behind them the door closed, and the stone felt like a held secret. Yet the island had given them something alive. The road home was full of the sound of their steps and a new, thin hope. At the river the boatman looked at them long. "Some things wake with kin, some with war," he said. He pushed the boat into the fog. They rode back under a sky-going light. Kamal held the box close. He did not know how the empire would hear or how the seeds would grow. He only knew one thing was true: once the ground remembers, it never forgets. And cliff, as the village roofs drew near, a distant horn sounded. It was the governor's horn. Someone had found a scrap of a map. They worked at night. The island was quiet and the sea held its breath. Kamal, Lyra, and 2 other farmers moved under low moonlight. The seeds inside the oilcloth box glowed faintly when they touched them. Each seed felt warm, like a small heart. They planted in rows the way their fathers had taught them. Hands moved slow and careful. The seeds sank into the soft earth and the soil closed above them like a hand closing on a thought. The island answered with small pulses underfoot, like a sleeping thing breathing. Kamal listened to the sound and felt something new in his chest. The seeds were not only life. They were old work made small. Back in the border towns, words became wind. Traders who had tasted the new grain spoke in low voices. A peddler from the city came through the market. He wore plain clothes and carried a pack full of tools and small gadgets. He smiled easily and the market trusted him. He liked to look at new things. He liked to ask questions. He took no notice of farmers until the farmers made new things. The peddler walked and looked. He stopped at stalls and pretended to buy. He watched faces and noted names. His eyes were quick like a bird's. He moved through the market like a man who meant to learn everything without being seen. No one thought much about a small peddler with a soft voice. No one saw his small scanner hidden inside his pack. Kamal watched the river from a small hill. He had wrapped new seeds in nets that would float. At night he would tie the nets to small boats and let the river carry them to the border fields. The nets would sink under moonlight and the seeds would sleep until dawn. He had done the work many times in his head. Tonight he felt more tired and more sure than ever. The village festival was near. Each year, people hung hollow lanterns on long poles. They carved slow songs into the lanterns and set them on poles that moved in the wind. The lights swung like slow stars. The festival was loud and full of sweets and games. It had small moves. Kamal and Lyra chose the festival night to move the seeds. 100 lights and 1,000 noises would hide the sound of nets and oars. The peddler came to the festival too. He liked noise. He liked the way people forgot to guard their meanings when they were happy. At dusk, hollow lanterns went up along the river. Children ran with paper flags. Men wore masks carved with old faces. The festival filled the air with drums and laughter. The peddler moved among the crowd with a polite smile. He bought a sweet, then another. He watched the river carefully. His pack hung light at his hip. Kamal stood on the bank with a small boat. He and 2 other farmers wore dark clothes and soft boots. Lyra counted the nets once more and checked the knots. Their hands were steady. They stepped into the water and pushed off. The festival's drums made a steady wall of sound. The hollow lanterns swung and clinked like many small bells. The peddler saw a crate near the boats and stopped. He pretended to tie his shoe. He watched the farmer's hands. He moved closer with the slow steps of a man who wants to be near a story. In his pack, a small scanner hummed quietly. It read heat and movement and named them for him. He liked such tools. They made a map of secrets. Kamal blew a soft note on the clay whistle. It was low and clear, like a tool call or a shepherd's code. The note rode the drum beat and went into the lantern light. The hollow lanterns answered with their reeds and tiny bells. The sound spread like a net and hid the seed's faint pulse. The peddler paused. The scanner in his pack made a small noise and then stopped. He frowned and lifted his hand. The device had been steady, but the festival's noise and the hollow lantern's reeds made it falter. He bent and moved his hand over his pack to check it, but the farmers were already moving. One by one, they slid the nets into the river. The water swallowed the light. The crates floated for a second, then sank beneath the dark. The farmers rowed back to shore and tied the boats to a rock. The peddler pushed through the crowd and reached the river bank too late. He called out, his voice lost among drums and laughter. "Hey," he shouted. "Stop." The boats bobbed and the river kept its secret. The peddler jumped into a small skiff and splashed after them. His boots hit the wet wood. He tried to push the oars, but his chest heaved. The festival noise rolled on the wind and kept the farmers hidden. The peddler cursed and used his small scanner to look through the dark. It showed blurs and cold shapes, but the reeds and water confused it. He could not find the true shape. Kamal felt the peddler's angry voice like rain on his back. He did not stop. He tied the last net and pulled it tight. The seeds inside were quiet and warm. He felt a small joy, pure and raw, like salt on the tongue. He looked at Lyra and she smiled without teeth. They were close to the river's bend now, where the current bit at the banks. The peddler's skiff scraped the shore. He climbed out and ran along the stones. People pushed and danced. He reached the festival path just as the last net slid into the water and sank out of sight. He pounded his fist on a pole. "You thieves," he cried. No one listened. They drank and clapped. The hollow lanterns sang. Defeated, angry and confused, the peddler walked back through the festival. On the path he saw a small broken lantern. It had been dropped. Inside lay a thin piece of folded metal wrapped in oil. Someone had dropped a scrap by mistake. He picked it up and opened it. The metal strip had a line scratched into it. The line curved like a river and ended in a small circle. The marks were small and old. The peddler's fingers trembled. He had seen such marks before in the governor's lists. He understood now that something bigger moved in the dark. His face changed. The soft smile left. He pulled out a small, flat stone and struck it against the metal to sharpen the lines. The map had been found. He reached into his pack and pressed his fingers to his throat as if to call someone. He crouched behind a stall and whispered into a small tube that was wired to a fast runner in town. His voice was low and urgent. By the river, the lanterns kept swinging and no one knew that a map had moved between hands. The seed slept in the water, and the farmers went home with their clothes damp and their hearts full. They did not know that one man had seen the map and that now, quietly and fast, a horn would sound in the governor's hall. And Cliff, the peddler's voice made the runner move like a struck bird. The governor's horn was already being readied. The dark line on the metal strip would soon be more than a secret. The governor's horn did not sound alone. It rolled across the hills and woke sleeping dogs. From the town roofs men tipped out of beds and took up their cloaks. The horn called riders and scribes and the governor's thin, sharp anger. The peddler's warning had reached the hall. The governor folded his hands over ink and paper and smiled like a man who knows a trap can be closed with words. He wrote laws while the sun rose. New papers flew from his desk like small white birds. All seeds must be registered, one read. All plows must be shown. Another said that any night movement of goods was a crime. The governor's men went with lists and rules. They put stamps on doors. They told the market that orders from the hall must be obeyed. Soldiers stood taller. Taxmen sharpened their scanners. The governor meant to take what he could with little blood and much law. He believed in ink. Ink made the world obey. But writing rules is not the same as closing routes. The border was wide and the people were many. The market had always survived by small tricks and small silences. When ink came down the road, the traders did not fight. They made paper shields. They wrote their own notes and gave them to clerks. They asked for receipts, signatures, dates. The governor's flood of papers filled the office floors and buried the clerks in work. Kamal watched the papers pile up in the town hall with a small smile. He did not like the governor, but he liked the slow ways that the governor's rules could be turned. He went to the clerk's window and handed over a scrap he had written. "This is a sample," he said. The clerk took it and blinked. The clerk had too many papers to read and 2 small children to feed. He put Kamal's scrap into a stack and drank his thin tea. Kamal's plan was simple. He used law to stop law. He made thousands of small records. Farmers walked into offices and filed names for seeds that did not yet exist. They described plows with careful detail. They signed with nicked thumbs. The clerks wrote and they wrote, and the governor's mountain of rules began to drown in a sea of harmless claims. Meanwhile the planted fields grew strange and strong. The seeds on the border woke and pushed up like green knives. They bent to the sun in patterns not taught by the governor's books. The towns noticed. Mothers complained less. Bread became thicker. Traders counted more coins. The harvests walked through the town like slow, proud animals. The governor did not like slow changes. He wanted a display that would break the farmers' small victories. He sent a judge with a carriage and law words carved into his mind. The judge looked at the fields with a face that measured everything by old rules. He spoke of ornament and code and wrote long pages. His report said the farmers had broken small rules but were not traitors. The governor read the report and slammed ink down. That answer would not satisfy him. So he tried force in a smaller way. He sent riders to search barns and to count plows. They came with lists and lights. They checked under hay and behind doors. They found old tools and broken pots. They found nothing that answered the metal strips line, but they took notes and left strong warnings. One rider, tired of riding and tired of counting, stayed behind at the edge of a field one night. A farmer played a simple flute and the sound walked across the stubble. The rider sat on the earth and listened. He remembered his own father's fields and a plow that could cut the world in two. The sound moved inside him like a spring. He did not stand and call for law. He sat and let the song fill his ribs. In the morning he left his post for a moment and did not return at once. The empire had soldiers, but not all had forgotten how to be men. The governor grew angry. He closed the main market for 3 days. Traders cursed and fed their children with little bread. The market's heart slowed, but it did not die. In the quiet streets, the farmers moved like careful hands. They used old customs and new papers to hide their work. They put seeds in priest boxes. They claimed them as holy offerings. They registered them as samples for the governor's own scholars. They wrote false names on plow handles. The governor's law became a blind instrument against itself. Word of the harvest spread. A rider from a far town came and tasted the bread. He lifted his beard and laughed. He wrote a note home that said, simply, "They grow strange grain there." The governor's men read it and frowned. An idea moved through the hall like smoke: what if the farmers were not to be crushed but to be shown? A public test, announced and watched, could prove the law's power. The governor liked the thought of a stage. He chose the market square for the display. It was the heart of the border and it could hold many people. He ordered a public seizure: plows, seeds, boxes, and the man who had stirred the market. He named Kamal in the loud call. He wanted the plow and the oilcloth box. He wanted the map in hand and the seeds in full view. He wanted to show the law that it could break promise into pieces. When the notice went out, the market changed. Men sharpened their knives more carefully. Women folded their shawls and whispered. Children hid between carts. Lyra heard the rider's name and her face went hard as stone. She packed a small bag with bread and the oilcloth and tied the whistle to her belt. Kamal stood by his field and listened to the town bell. He felt the old seeds like a heartbeat against his chest. The governor's stage would be loud, and the riders would be proud. Kamal thought of paper and law and the small ways he had turned them. He thought of the rider who had sat and listened to a song. He thought of the judge and his ink. He walked toward the market with the same slow step he had used all his life. People watched him as he passed. Some crossed themselves. Some placed hands over their mouths. The governor's men would not find him alone. He had others. He had songs and papers and a stubborn root that would not break. At the market gates the riders were already preparing. Banners snapped. The governor's scribe read the list. Soldiers polished metal. The crowd pressed in and the air tasted like a summer storm. Kamal felt the weight of the crowd like a hand pulling at his shirt. He put the oilcloth box under his arm and tightened his grip on the whistle. He stepped into the square and into the governor's stage. The riders smiled like men who expect applause. Kamal looked at them and did not bow. He stood quiet and ready. The market held its breath. Somewhere in the town the governor touched his pen and waited to watch if the law would win or if a farmer's small revolt would open a new door. End clip. The governor will demand the plow and the seeds. Kamal will offer a bargain that uses the governor's own ink. The square waits for his words. The market square was full. Banners snapped in the wind. Soldiers stood like iron teeth. The governor sat high on his stand with the scribe at his side. His face was cold and steady. He loved when law looked like a blade. Kamal walked into that open space with the oilcloth box under his arm. Lyra was beside him. Farmers stood behind them, quiet as a field before rain. People pressed close. Children climbed on carts to see. The air smelled of dust and hot bread. The governor called the market to order. His voice rolled out and fell on the crowd. He read from a long paper. All irregular goods will be seized, he said. Anyone who resists the law will be punished. His voice left no room for question. Kamal stepped forward. He did not bow. He did not shout. He set the box on the table in front of the governor's stand and put the clay whistle beside it. The scribe watched with ink ready. The governor's eyes narrowed like a gate closing. You broke the law, the governor said. You hid goods that were not registered. Kamal looked at the governor and then at the people. His voice was calm and plain. These seeds are promised to the border towns, he said. They will be planted and feed the people for 1 year. I ask a simple bargain, if the fields feed the towns, you lower the border tax for 1 season. A ripple moved through the crowd. The governor laughed once. You ask the law to bind me with your word, he said. Law is mine to make and break. Kamal had counted on this. He was not a man who trusted loud power. He trusted ink and the thin weight of a signed line. He turned to the scribe and asked for a public contract. Write it plain, he said. If these fields feed the towns, taxes lowered for 1 season. If not, I will accept the law. The scribe hesitated. He knew the governor liked control. The governor's hand moved like a hawk. But the market watched. The scribe's paper could not lie if the governor sealed his own name. The scribe wrote in slow strokes. The crowd listened like a crowd that waits to see what a man will do. The governor studied the words. His face did not change much, but the small twitch at the corner of his mouth told Kamal he felt the trap. He could refuse to sign and seize the seeds. He could sign and risk being shown wrong in public. Pride and fear cross even great men. At last the governor dipped his pen. You will plant under guard, he said. We will watch. Kamal agreed. Let the town send watchers, he said. Let the judge mark the fields. If the harvest fails, I will answer. They signed. The ink on the paper shone like a small law. The governor's seal was heavy on it. The crowd cheered low and soft, like wind through grain. The soldiers lined the path as Kamal and the farmers carried the seeds to the fields. The governor sent men to record and watch every row. Kamal planted with the same slow hands he used all his life. Lyra worked beside him. Farmers from many villages came and planted too. The town's judge stood at the field edge and wrote the dates. Soldiers walked the rows and watched the soil. They did not touch the plants. They looked like men who had been told to guard curiosity. The seeds grew in a way people did not expect. They shot up swift and thick. The leaves were strong and held rain like cups. When storms came, the plants bent and did not break. Birds fed and did not fly away. The grain filled like lungs filling with air. The season passed. People watched. The town's kitchens smelled of bread more often. The market carts carried fuller sacks. Children no longer went hungry to sleep. The judge recorded yield numbers and his pen moved faster than a man who had expected to write down shame. When harvest came, the field shimmered with grain. The harvest fed the town for months. The contract lay in the governor's hall like a knife that had cut the air. The governor did not like to be shown wrong, but he also did not like to break a signed line. The scribe's ink bound him. He walked to the market and spoke to the people. His voice was quieter than before. For one season, he said, border taxes are lowered. He read the signed paper aloud. Some cried. Others laughed. The governor kept his face steady, but inside his rule had a new fold. Men had learned law could be used against law. Not all were pleased. Some of the governor's council called Kamal a trickster. They whispered of danger and of seeds that change the land. They wanted to call more soldiers, to take the fields and learn what power the seeds held. But the people had tasted bread and law, and they held the signed paper like a shield. Kamal accepted the lowered tax. He did not want gifts from the hall. He wanted simple breathing room for his people. The governor sent a small gift, a bright new plow with an iron blade and a short note, learn what you can. Kamal took the plow and set it in the earth. He used it once, slowly, to cut a furrow. The land answered. The map in the plow's hidden strip had one more line. It pointed to a place far beyond the border, a place that hummed in the old metal. Kamal read the line and felt the same small tilt of possibility he had felt before. Lyra touched his arm and smiled. They had not broken an empire. They had moved a law and shifted many stones. The governor kept his hall and his ink, but he learned to listen more to the market's small voices. The rider who had once smiled like a knife came sometimes to the edge of the fields and sat on a stone. He no longer spoke of law in sharp tones. People said he watched the plow as if it told stories. Kamal stood at the field's edge one evening, the whistle in his hand. He had won a season and bought a voice for his people. He looked at the map tucked in the plow and then at the long dark road that led away from the border. He put the whistle to his lips and blew a single, clear note. It rolled out over the fields and river and into the wide sky. The sound carried like a promise. The world listened. The seeds had changed a law, and a farmer had made the empire keep its own ink. The land would remember that sound for a long time. And somewhere, beyond the border and the hills, the map waited for the next hand to read it.